What's up, guys? Welcome back to CRYPTOnite. Be your own bank. Guys, it's time to take back control of your finances. It's time to take back control of your wealth and your life, guys, because it's only going to get worse with our current banking systems, the inflation. You want to be in control of your money, in control of your life. You do not want we're facing today, and that's why crypto has come at the perfect time, guys. Just like in Star Wars, when the dark side rises, the light side rises right with it. Who is the light to combat the darkness that is our current financial world today and how it's being manipulated and controlled? So that's why I'm a huge proponent. A lot of people have said, "Oh, you're just in crypto because like you want to get rich." Like, no, honestly, it's not what it's about for me. To me, it's about empowering people like yourself to take control of their life, to take control of their finances, to be able to be your own bank, right? Instead of giving your money to a bank who doesn't really give you any sort of return, uses your money to go make more money, while you get nothing other than, you get a little bit of security. They hold it in a vault for you, or, if someone uses your credit card, they'll cancel the charges. So you're getting some security. I'll give you that. But other than that, all you're doing is losing money over time, because what's happening is you're putting your dollars in a bank, and the government, the Federal Reserve, is printing dollars to spend on whatever they want, or just spend to try to pay down the interest on the massive debt we have in America. That's our biggest expense right now, is just interest on our debt, right? That's our bigger than military, bigger than medical, interest on our own debt. So your dollars are going to just waste away in a bank. You will not keep up with the rate of inflation, which kicked up quite drastically in 2020 when 40% of our entire money supply was printed in just a year during the 2020 times, I'll say. So we all lost a lot of money. We all got some free money from the government that we thought was great, but we actually lost money in the long run, because look at the buying power that we've lost after getting a couple, few $100 checks from the government. We think we're like, oh, sweet. But then now we're paying the true price for that, and everything's more expensive, rent's more expensive, all your expenses went up. Probably quite a bit. So, yeah, you got your $400 from the government, but your rent price that just went up $300 a month, well, if you add that up for a year, right? 300, that's an extra, it's thousands of dollars. So your $400 check from the government was not worth the thousands of dollars you are now paying for it, due to the printing of the money supply. So that is the reality of the world we live in, and we've got to make the most of it, and we've got to try to find ways to hedge and to protect our wealth in assets, guys. I'm big on just putting your money in assets, and at the very least, if you're not going to put your money in assets, put your money in some sort of yield. Maybe it's a bank CD where you're getting 1.5% or something. I mean, that's better than nothing. Or there are some bank accounts right now, because the interest rates are so high, that you can get 2 to 5%. Fidelity, for example, if you have a savings account with them, I think you get like 2.5%. If you hold money in an IRA, you get around 4.5%. So at the very least, Robinhood's another one where if you put your money in Robinhood, you can get a percentage. Put your money in something that's giving you a minimum of like a 1.5% yield. Just if your money's just going to sit there. I mean, you're not going to keep up with the rate of inflation at all, but hey, it's better than nothing, okay? Because your money sits in a bank, you're just losing money day after day after day. I know some people, they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, well, Tim, but $1's still $1. Why would I invest in Bitcoin? Bitcoin's so volatile. $1's always $1. And let me show you this. This is the dollar, right? So the dollar is not $1. The dollar fluctuates just like any other currency versus any other currency. And as you can see, we have a nice steady decline happening in the US dollar. Now, we did have a spike here recently because they raised the interest rate so high, which raised the value of the dollar. But as you can see, we've hit critical resistance. We're likely going to come back down. So, no, the dollar is not a dollar, guys. A dollar is a currency. It fluctuates in value, just like everything else. Is Bitcoin a tad more volatile right now in terms of its fluctuation? Yeah, that's true. I'll give you that. But guys, the dollar, it's a currency. It fluctuates. It's not, a dollar is not always a dollar, right? It's sometimes worth a lot less. And right now it's worth a lot less than it was, right? I think $5 is the new $1, right? In today's world. And it's only going to continue to get worse. So we need to be prepared for that. We need to look to alternatives than holding our money in US dollars in order to. Now, the funny part is it's all about perspective, because there's actually a lot of countries like Argentina, for example, Turkey, who have way worse inflation than we do. So they, like, the US dollar is like Bitcoin to them, because their currencies are rapidly inflating so much that even the US dollar that's also inflating is still more of a safe haven than their own currency, right? So it's a matter of perspective, right? If you live in Turkey, you live in Argentina, then the US dollar looks like Bitcoin to you, as far as like how fast it's devaluing itself. Not nearly as fast as some of these other currencies. If you're in the US and you're thinking, okay, Bitcoin's obviously increasing in value, right? So compared to my currency in the US, Bitcoin's obviously a lot better of an option to. Now, there's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research. I'm just a random guy on YouTube. But it is all a matter of perspective. So I do think that a lot of other countries, can see the value too, even more so in Bitcoin. But guys, the dollar fluctuates. Okay, you've been told, oh no, dollar is safe, blah blah blah. And look, it is. All right, guys, let's talk some Bitcoin here. If you looked at my last video, we did some TA here on Bitcoin. We're gonna do some TA, and then I'm gonna show you guys some news. Just update you a little bit. So right now, of course, we are getting this really massive. In fact, I'm gonna use a different chart here. We're getting this pretty massive candle right here to the upside. It's quite large, as you can see. If we look back, we can see that it's actually larger than any of these previous candles in the previous bull run that started around 2020. And hey, look, guys, look at that. 2020. That's when we printed 40% of our money supply. Well, look what happened to Bitcoin's price. Interesting, right? That's Bitcoin's main purpose is to inverse inflation, essentially, to inverse money printing. It goes up because it's a scarce hard asset when money is printed. And as you can see, money got printed very quickly. And so, of course, the price of Bitcoin rose very quickly. We saw during this downturn, we saw the government raising interest rates and trying to reduce the money supply. Bitcoin's price also dropped during that time. So Bitcoin is inverse of the money supply. Now, over the long term, money is getting inflated. Even though there are these cycles where the interest rates will go up and they will reduce the amount of money in supply for a time, it's always continuously still going up, guys, because we are in a debt system that is a sort of a death spiral, that we have to continue to print money in order to pay down the interest on the debt that we have. That's only going to continue to, because once we print money, well, our debt goes up and we can pay the interest on the debt to avoid defaulting. But then guess what? Now our debt is higher, which means our interest rate is higher, which means we have to pay more interest on the debt, which means we have to print even more money in the future just to pay off the interest, which will then increase the debt itself, which will then increase the interest payment. You see how this cycle spirals to nothing, right? To the point where we will default someday and not be able to, what's going to happen is, or what's likely to happen, I shouldn't say what's going to happen. What's likely to happen is you will see a scenario like in Argentina, like a Turkey, where, down the road, I'm not saying anytime soon, but down the road, you will see the currency devalue to the point where people will start to leave the country because opportunities are going to be better elsewhere. in the world to be able to make a decent living and not pay, your entire salary for a piece of bread kind of thing. Like in Argentina, they don't count their money. They weigh their money. That's how bad the inflation is there. And people have, been fleeing that country. I saw it firsthand when I was in Colombia visiting. I saw a lot of, Venezuela. I'm totally messing up. Venezuela. A lot of them were leaving to, Venezuela. Sorry, I'm getting my countries mixed up here. There was a lot of refugees from Venezuela who were fleeing because they couldn't really make a good like they're. What do you do when you're spending your entire wage on food and you have no other money to do stuff? You know what I mean? So that's the eventual outcome for currency printing and inflating like that. It will hit the U.S. at some point. Again, probably not for a little while. We're in a better situation than some countries. So at that point, you'll want to leave. So that's why I'm very much looking into what other citizenships can I get to other countries to where I can sort of escape potentially the U.S. debt spiral and what's going to happen at the end. And, it might not happen before I die, to be honest. Like, things could still be good before I pass away, but at least I can set my kids up to have other places to go and to have other opportunities in places that will have better opportunities. So we'll see how fast or how slow the process happens. And so we need to prepare for that. So we're looking at Bitcoin. We see we have this massive candle. And the volume on it, to me, although there's still about a day left on it, is pretty low. And if we look at some other exchanges here, you can see just how low the volume is on such a large candle. And if we look at these previous candles, we can see that there was a lot of volume, so there's a lot of effort, right? Volume is effort. And we also saw a large result. Effort and result were in unison, price goes up. This to me is odd because we're seeing a result, in fact, a larger result than any of these previous candles. But where's the effort? The effort's not there, right? Unless there's some sort of dark pool. Sometimes exchanges can hide their volumes when selling to large institutions and stuff because they can kind of do dark pools and they can essentially hide a lot of some of their volume, essentially, to hide it from like retail investors like myself, which is unfortunate. So that obviously could be happening since a lot of institutions are buying up Bitcoin with the ETF approvals. So I kind of feel like could be partially what's going on here, because normally this would be a huge anomaly, right? You'd be like, okay, something's off here because there should be way more effort to produce that kind of result. So either A, a lot of money is being traded off exchanges to reduce the volumes, or B, this is legitimately a true anomaly. And with any large anomaly like this, you'll typically see potentially here soon a big correction, right? As the big players are marking the price up to try to unload their stores of supply. That's one thing that can happen, right? So I guess for me, I'm kind of expecting that. I'm expecting that it will come down. I'm as you can tell, I'm a little bit torn because I do think that the dark pool thing is real. I don't necessarily think that everyone's playing by the same rules, if that makes sense. If that's true, then these volumes we can just ignore them. But for now, I'll trust that at least most of the people in the world, or most of the people, are transacting, in a way that is right, I guess, and that the volume is true. It is a true anomaly. I'll have to, until I hear something else, I'll have to go with the idea that this is an anomaly, and with any anomaly, we can see that. Go to the pipe. Okay, so as you can see, we have this volume profile here, like I talked about in my previous video, and like I said in the last video, I said we actually were below this blue line here. I'm going to move this out of the way. We were below this blue line before when I was posting yesterday, and I said that I did think that we would come up above the volume profile, which we have. So we did that did happen. We pumped all the way up to almost 64,414, somewhere around there. As you can see, we have our previous resistance kind of wicks here. I would say even 60. So right at this blue line, you can see that like price would come up and then it would close underneath, right? Or just about underneath. I mean, this is like really close. So we are pumping up above. We do have about a day left on this monthly candle. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see it actually close back underneath this blue volume area high. In which case, this could be the local top. And we could see a bigger correction down because a lot of times these volume profiles tend to like to range. And I mean, here's just a scenario. Here's an idea, right? Maybe this happens where we get a pattern gets created, right? So let's say we get 2 hits here, come up, we hit here. Let's say we correct back down to the mid 30s. And let's say we start making this pattern here, which would be a triangle with a flat top, which is a very bullish pattern. That typically, more often than not, statistically breaks to the upside. And with the halving coming up soon, usually with the halving, there's a little bit of a lull after the halving before prices move up. So I think a very real scenario is that this is going to be a giant consolidation pattern where, again, we will get rejected, we will come down, boom, boom, boom. You'll see this volume profile will get smaller as we pull it farther out with more volume getting traded here. This will actually shrink. Like this bottom piece will keep moving up, keep moving up, keep moving up. And so you could see a scenario in which we come down, we test this low, and then by the time that happens, this volume area, this higher area low has moved up to like mid 30s. Maybe we dip below, come down, retest maybe 30 before getting support, jumping back up into this trend line and continuing the pattern. Maybe even a drop out before then we bust, and then the halving happens and then we get a lull. And then by the time that we crescendo in this pattern, boom, we see our expansion phase of the Bitcoin price. And let's just, for fun, let's just see like what would the target be of this expansion phase. About 100,000, 107,000. So now I don't like there's so much space right here, which is kind of strange. That doesn't look as good for this pattern. That's just an idea. As you can see on the monthly time frame, we are seeing already potentially, if this creates kind of a top, we see some some selling, it close back in the range. Could be seeing actually a hidden bearish divergence where we actually have and this would have to make I believe a higher, no, because we have this high here, and then let's say this was the top. This would make a lower high, but obviously on the RSI we're making a higher high. This would be a hidden bearish divergence. Also, we're also in the oversold area, which we did get to right here in the last run, and as you can see, price continued to move up quite high because there's a lot of momentum. So that's also a scenario, right? We crossed the 80 line on the RSI, so potentially this scenario could happen where we just push straight up. Again, what's concerning me is just the volume, which was a lot higher during this accumulation stage, and even these first few candles as we crossed over the 80 had some volume on them. These, in my opinion, there's not volume there. So unless, again, the dark pools, that to me is a little bit strange as to why we wouldn't be seeing that effort to produce that kind of result. So as of now, I'm kind of, I guess, trusting the volume profiles in that typically you get a push above a volume profile. It likes to come down. It likes to fill the range. A lot of times it will deviate below or above and then come back into the range, get support at the bottom of the range, and then it will fill the range to the top. And this is what a lot of the people that I follow were talking about, this range filling as soon as we got back into range. So now we've broken above the range. We've deviated from the value area high. We could see further, deviations outside, even a possible liquidity grab from the top before coming back into range. Or it could, again, do what we did in 2020 and just go up as well. So no one knows exactly what's going to happen. I'm obviously not going to be like selling any of my Bitcoin anytime soon, just because I don't see any reason to sell any of my Bitcoin pretty much ever, because once you sell it, it becomes a taxable event. I'd rather use cryptocurrency, which you can, there's blockchains and wallets to where you can actually like lend out your cryptocurrencies if you need cash at that moment for like another investment or for some expense. You can actually lend out your crypto on these protocols, and they'll give you not all of it back in the value, because you don't want to get liquidated, right? So there is risk there. If your asset that you lend out, if the price drops too much, you'll get liquidated, right? So there's risk. You're essentially taking a leveraged position, if you will. But if you're someone like me, like Bitcoin's one of the hardest assets in the world, with 21 million hard cap, probably less than that available because people will have lost it or people will have died and their wallets are inaccessible. So there's a lot of supply that will never come back because it's on a hidden wallet somewhere. Someone died. They didn't pass along their seed phrase. So there's really less than 21 million that are going to be available ever. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are just going to hold forever. I don't see any reason to ever sell. If anything, I would probably just lend it out if I needed cash for another investment or for some sort of expense. I would just do that instead. Save the money in taxes. Again, that's a very common approach of a lot of successful people, is they, with taxes being as high as they are, like, why would you sell a really good asset? You might as well just take out a loan against it, pay a small percentage fee for doing that, but then save all that tax money. So that's kind of, I think, a good idea. If you feel like the asset, you got to really believe in the asset, and you got to really feel like even if it does come down, that it's you're not taking too much risk. So let's say that I had like, I feel even though Bitcoin will have another, it will have further corrections like this, right? There will be another bear market. If you get in like low enough, and if you are lending it out, you're taking like a low enough risk on it to where, let's say price, I lend it out, I get some money back, but based on the liquidation price, Bitcoin would have to drop below like 20,000 to ever get liquidated. I obviously don't see that ever. Never say never. Anything can happen, but I'd say very low odds that Bitcoin will ever, or at least in any recent time period, drop below $20,000 ever again. So my risk of liquidation would probably be quite low, because I just can't see how an asset this hard with this much demand would ever go that low again, right? So that would be kind of the strategy with that. Now, again, looking at these volume profiles, again, hopefully, again, this volume is quite low. I guess it has been a little bit increasing here on this move up, as you can see. So, but overall, you can see that from the bottom, very bottom, some declines, especially with here, decline in volume. So we'll see what happens there. I'm looking for, as far as my trading account goes, not my stash of Bitcoin that will probably never be sold ever. For my trading account, I am looking at potential short positions. Now that we've deviated from the range, if we do end up closing back within the value area high, I will be looking for short positions. Because as you can see, we're already making this potential blue trail is starting to appear here, which is from Lux Algo, and as you can see, it kind of acts as like a support line. So oftentimes it'll come down to this like blue support line, like it did here, and get support really nicely. So correction happens, we come back down, our blue support line. Especially if it lines up with this trend line as well, that'll be like extra confluence to know, okay, that correction's over. We can start more long positions from there. So I'm not necessarily looking to buy a lot more Bitcoin right now. I would preferably like to see some sort of correction to a retracement indicator of some sort before I would, put in more money. So that's kind of my current strategy. I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone. I think if you're someone that is a little bit more of a passive investor or passive trader, you ought to just keep dollar cost averaging. Just have something automated that keeps just putting the money in day after day, even at these prices. That's fine, you know. Like, I could be wrong, and we could just keep going, and then I'll be like, dang it, like I wish I would have put more money in here, right? So if you're not as involved day to day, I would definitely recommend just dollar cost averaging. That's the best way to do it. Jumping down to some lower time frames. So again, we are potentially printing this hidden bearish divergence here on the weekly. We are potentially, if we top out here, some sort of like either a flat divergence or a slight bearish divergence on the weekly time frame. Again, it would have to. There's still 4 days left on this, so we'll see how it closes. And we are at a key. Oh, never mind. We busted right past the 786 there retracement level. So we're not even at a significant Fibonacci level anymore. Crazy. The price is, there's just a lot of demand. Anyway, let's see. Let's take a look a little lower. So we're on the daily. As you can see, if this does come down, and this is a top here, this will be a fairly significant daily bearish divergence. Ton of volume in this move. And it is quite larger than a lot of the other candles, so you could say that technically that's valid, depending on how this finishes. Like if this finishes, only 40 minutes left in this. So if this finishes in the next 40 minutes, it drops way low, and we see a really small spread, that's obviously going to be a big sign of weakness. With that high of volume, with a very small spread, this looks decently large for now. A little bit of selling pressure, obviously, on this candle, some profit taking. So I guess we'll see in the next 40 minutes where this candle finishes. Could tell us more of the story. On the 4 hour, as you can see, we are seeing some signs of weakness with this very small spread, doji candle, very high volume. That can be a trend reversal signal, potentially. It'd be nice to see a couple of them. Like typically you want to see 2 to 3 small spread, high volume candles to kind of signal the true top. Right now, only seeing just this one pretty massive one. It's definitely a sign of weakness. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're coming down right away. Momentum is still very high to the upside. We're not creating any bearish divergences. Money flow is in the green. So I think we need to see a couple more of these small spread, high volume candles to kind of tell us that maybe the top is in. So I wouldn't necessarily take a trade just off this one doji. I'd probably wait to see if we get a couple more small spread, high volume candles before trying to short Bitcoin right now. It's just so crazy bullish. On the 1 hour, again, we're getting kind of a similar thing. Very high volume, a lot of liquidations coming in. Oh my gosh, more liquidations than. So I mean, I might try to take a short here. Just seeing that high of volume with that high of liquidations, you know, typically you see some moves happen on those type of things, right? So no guarantee, but could be a potential opportunity for a short position based on liquidation volume, doji. Maybe we liquidity grab this one more time, kind of make a double top, something like that. So I'm definitely looking for, again, I'm not selling anything on the spot market, but I am looking to potentially take a short here soon based on we being at the extreme highs of the volume profile and seeing some of these signs of weakness. So that's for Bitcoin. Another thing, my idea. So Coinbase has been quite good to me. I got in like around the $70 to $80 range with some shares, mainly because I think Coinbase is a good stock. I think that it's a good company. They're one of the first in the crypto space. They're probably the most well-known crypto exchange in the US. They started USDC, which is a cryptocurrency that's backed by the US dollar. And it's one that is very widely used and very trusted and respected. And I knew that with the ETFs coming, and I read some reports that the big institutions like BlackRock, Fidelity, they were going to be using Circle, they were going to be using USDC and Coinbase as like their main for the ETFs, right? So I was able to invest in that, and obviously you can see we've seen this breakout, and we were continuing higher. I actually filled we actually filled this range here. So I was looking at this previous volume profile, and we actually came up, got rejected by the point of control here, came down out of the range, then came back up in, and we actually filled this previous consolidation range, which is pretty cool. So the next area here is going to be this range up here of consolidation. So we'll see if we hit our heads here on 222. If we hit our heads, if we can get back into that range, there's a good chance we'll fill that range as well up to 284. So Coinbase does tend to rise with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because they're obviously making more money. More people are transacting. They're getting more money off fees. And their overall holdings of cryptocurrency are going up as well. So it's essentially like having exposure, double exposure to crypto, just in the stock world. And that's kind of the way I saw it, was I wanted to have some stock exposure, but I wanted to keep it in the area that I know, which is cryptocurrency. So there are some people that would say, hey, don't ever, double your sort of head on one thing. But I kind of prescribe to the idea that if you know something really well, you should just stick to that, right? Like, there's two schools of thought. School of thought one is pick a market you know really, really well and just stick to it. Option two is, diversify a lot to make sure that you don't have too much exposure to one market. I kind of go, both work. I kind of like the first. I say, hey, you know what? If the crypto market is what I'm passionate about, if it's what I know, if it's what I study, if it's what I just love learning about, then I'm just going to stick to this. I'm just going to stick to the crypto world and just be an expert here. And I think that will pay dividends for me. So, and it has so far. So Coinbase, pretty cool. Obviously, it's pumped quite a bit here. We'll see if Bitcoin cools off. It will likely cool off as well, which again, I'll probably look to accumulate down here at this previous kind of bottom of this range here. I'll look to probably accumulate more if it comes back down. But here we might be actually seeing quite a weekly divergence as well, depending on where this stops. So this could be a pretty strong top sign for Coinbase, as well as they're going to start getting more competition, right? Like other companies do the same thing, right? Kraken, which is another company similar to Coinbase, has filed to try to get their own, to try to compete with Coinbase in the ETF space. So this is not like Bitcoin. This is not like a cryptocurrency. This is a company that provides services in crypto, and there are going to be other companies that will try to provide the same service and will try to do it better, thus creating competition. And either Coinbase will thrive off that competition and improve it even more, or it will, fail to the competition. So this is a company. This is not a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. I would sell this. I'm not going to, be like, oh, I'm just going to hold this forever kind of thing. Like, this is something I would sell at certain points because it is a company. Doesn't have the intrinsic lack of central point of failure of like a Bitcoin, for example. So that's Coinbase. I did want to go into some news real quick that I was reading up on. Where did it go? Here we go. So I thought it'd be kind of cool just to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and just some stuff. This is a cool email, the Wealth Mastery from Lark, which is really cool. It's free, so it's really, really cool. These are some emails from the original Satoshi Nakamoto, which we don't really know the identity of this person. It could be a group of people. It might not be just an individual person who kind of created Bitcoin. And it's I thought it was interesting hearing these emails that got released kind of about the early, before Bitcoin was still, being worked on, kind of what the thought process behind it was. Interesting that they thought that there'd be 100,000 nodes by this point, and there's only about half that, which I was surprised to see that. I really thought there was more nodes. So interesting. Obviously, there are these assertions, which I do believe to be true, and that Bitcoin would use less energy than our current banking system. The big push against crypto for a lot of the more liberal-minded folk is that it uses too much energy, global warming and such. But obviously, our banking system does use quite a bit of energy itself in terms of all the waste that goes on with that. And yes, Bitcoin does use energy and will continue to use more energy over time, but also the incentive model will continue to produce innovation in terms of creating that energy at a cheaper rate, or finding ways to create systems that make things more efficient. And I do believe that humans, when given the proper incentives, do tend to work well and do tend to produce and create things that we would have never imagined were possible. So I do think that the incentive model with Bitcoin will bring out the best in people in terms of their innovativeness to create ways to mine Bitcoin for cheaper and use less energy. I know it's like a little bit of it's just wishful thinking, hopeful thinking. But again, we've seen what humankind can do when properly motivated with the right incentives. There's pretty much not anything that we can't do when properly motivated. So I still think that is going to be a non-issue over time, and it's still worth the price, right? The price that we're paying in energy is still worth it to have something as valuable as Bitcoin. Let me real quickly put my laptop here is losing some. Oh, I get to keep my investment in Bitcoin. This old video. Hey, that's a lot. Oh, it's the last video here that you can watch if you want to check it out. Interesting that in his notes here, he talks about the legal concerns with Bitcoin being categorized as an investment. And also, Bitcoin, although it is pseudo-anonymous, it's not completely anonymous, so it's not. It can still be tracked. So it's not as perfect in that sense. What else would I find interesting about this? So they're saying if it did grow to consume significant energy, I think it would still be less wasteful, right? We talked about that. And then he does mention, kind of some notes about money in general, which is, scarce commodities become money, right? Shells have been used for money, stones have been used for money. Humans will use anything that's scarce for money. So Bitcoin's quite scarce, and that's one of the intangible. When we talk about money, one of the intangibilities of something that can be used as money has to be scarce, right? That's one of the major pillars of what makes money a trustworthy thing. And so, Bitcoin being the way that it is, with the way it's coded and open source and can't really be altered, having that hard cap of money is a very strong use case for money. He talks about gold. Vast majority of gold sits unused in vaults, right? People don't. It's got some. It is more scarce, and it does have some use cases as far as it is easily malleable, so it will be easy to transact with, potentially. And we know that it is because it's gold and it's been used. And also, it does have some use cases in terms of electronics. You do use gold in that as well. So it does have some other values to it. But again, a lot of it just sits unused in vaults, right? Because it's scarce, and people have decided that's valuable. Okay, and people will pay a lot of money for it. But obviously with crypto and Bitcoin, you can trade it. You don't have to worry about holding the physical item itself, which again creates other issues in terms of just you could send it to the wrong address and lose it all. And so there are these risks that you really have to be very disciplined with, quadruple checking the address you're sending it to, only sending a small amount at first to test it, to make sure you have the right address, to make sure that you've done everything correctly. So if you do mess up, then this happened to me the other day where I was trying to deposit money onto an exchange, and I didn't realize that the money, when I sent it over in a certain currency, it actually converted it without me knowing to a different currency. And so I tried to withdraw it. Now again, I tested it. I only withdrew I only put in about $5. So then when I tried to withdraw the $5, I lost the $5 because I didn't realize that it had automatically converted that currency into a different currency. And so when I tried to send it in the currency that I thought it just was lost. But again, it was only $5 because I made sure to test it, so that way I'm not going to lose $10,000, which some people have done, which is crazy. But that is one of the downsides, I would say, of crypto, and why there will be a lot of people that won't ever be interested in there is some margin for error where, you could potentially send something to the wrong thing and lose thousands of dollars. So that is a risk. A lot of people never want to take that risk, and I can understand that, especially depending on how old you are. If I'm 60 and I have this retirement account, things could get real bad for me if I messed up on my wallet address and sent it to the wrong thing or on the wrong network, and I lost, $50,000 that I was going to use to live on for the next 20 years, right? You would really have to be very savvy with technology, and a lot of folk that are older are not, and so they're not going to take the risk, and I completely understand that. If I were their age, I might not take the risk either, to be honest. So I do think that it's good to continue to, as you make money, you're going to take a certain element of risk, but then you're also taking the gains you make from the riskier things and you're rolling them into safer investments, like just holding Bitcoin in a wallet and not really touching it, or real estate, or things that are a little bit harder to lose, I guess. And that is one of my goals here on this channel, is to help people understand how to use blockchains and wallets to where they can use them safely, to where, because I still get a little nervous when I'm sending money to another account. Like I get the butterflies, because like, what if I screw this up, and what if this money disappears, right? So I still get those butterflies, but I've done it enough times. I have a procedure for which I test and check 5 times, and I make sure that's like a law for me, to make sure. And now I feel a little bit, I don't get as nervous when I send money. I know it's going to go to the place I'm going to, because I've gone through my procedures. So that is something that we'll see if over time the innovators in crypto can kind of create some fail safes for that, to where someone would feel a little safer sending their money and not worrying about it disappearing, right? So I don't want to scare you, but there is that reality, and so you do have to be quite disciplined and also savvy, which is why there's not necessarily, we haven't seen crypto maybe take off the way that, the internet might take off, right? Or different things. So there is still those elements holding it back. And there is an element to, like, without those elements in place, crypto kind of isn't crypto, if it makes sense. Like, because there's that element of self-sovereignty and self-responsibility when it comes to having a wallet, having your keys, it's private, it's not a bank's, right? To where, a bank can't bail you out and be like, hey, we saw that you, like, sent it to the wrong address. Here, we'll send it back to you, right? Like, a bank would do that, right? Crypto's not going to do that. It's a little more, you snooze, you lose. And so it just depends on what convenience you're willing to sacrifice, and what that means for you in the future. For you right now, it might not be worth it. It might not be worth the risk. Totally understandable. Or you might need to hire somebody, like myself, to kind of help you do it, or do it for you. So that way you don't run the risk of screwing up something and losing your money. But as always, there's a sort of a price you pay in terms of your privacy, in terms of your freedom, by interacting with the banking system. And let's say you disagree. Let's say 30 years from now you disagreed with the government policy. You used your freedom of speech to vocalize your disagreement. Let's say that your bank account was frozen by an authority in power at that time, who was a little bit more controlling, a little more totalitarian. They froze your account. You have no money now. And good luck buying food. You will essentially have to be like, hey, please give me my money back. I promise I won't ever talk ill of you again. And once that occurs, that's the death of democracy. That's the death of freedom, because then who's going to speak out against things that are wrong, right? You're not going to, because they can freeze your bank account. Whereas someone like me, in the same scenario, I might be able to freely continue to speak out against the government, because maybe my money's in a crypto wallet that only I can access, and I'm safe, right? If I speak out against the government and they don't like what I'm saying, they can't freeze my money. So it gives me, it puts, although there's risk to it, it puts the power back in your hands, in terms of you can, use your rights, your freedom of speech, your freedom, like you have those, you can use those freedoms into the future and be protected. You can still eat, but there will be a lot of people that won't be able to speak their minds freely in the future because they will have a risk of their money being frozen and they can't eat. And I don't blame anyone who would choose to eat over maybe, speaking and using their freedom of speech. I would probably eat too if I was in that scenario. But how do we set ourselves up to where we're not in that scenario and we're protected? And that is what crypto is about. It's about protecting yourself for the future, protecting your wealth, protecting yourself from potential future totalitarianism, which I do think, as we've seen throughout history, does come, right? The fact that we've had this democracy in the U.S. for as long as we've had it is pretty much a miracle, because no democracy has ever lasted this long. No free country has ever really lasted as long as we have. It's pretty incredible. It's miraculous what has been achieved in America. But if we look throughout history, most of the time this does not happen. It does not happen very long. Another regime takes over. It's typically some sort of, one ruler kind of thing. And obviously a lot of atrocities get committed and a class system develops that you really can't move up in. And around the cycle we go, right? And then that regime falls, another regime takes over. This is just the story of humanity, if you will. So I know I'm talking about a lot of future things. I'm a very forward future thinker, as you can probably tell. But I like to be prepared. And so keep following my channel if you want to be prepared and you want to be in the know on crypto and continue to build that protection for yourself, for your future kids, to where you're protected and you can continue to exercise your freedoms, your God-given freedoms. So cheers to Bitcoin, guys. Cheers to crypto. See if are we pumping back up here a little bit? 20 minutes until this candle closes. It's looking pretty nice. No short yet, probably. All right, guys. Subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.